All right, well, I'll go ahead and introduce myself more formally. I'm Janeen Welsh, and I was asked to give this presentation, I think partly because I've been in the remodeling industry for 30 years. I'm a certified kitchen and bathroom modeler and also a certified aging in place specialist. And so that certification is, probably 20 years old. And it primarily addresses aging in place from a remodeling and construction standpoint. But I've also been educated personally with working with someone with dementia because my father-in-law had vascular dementia. He had a mini stroke and then went into dementia actively. And my mother-in-law is in the early stages of dementia. So I welcome you here. It is a small group, but we will chat and just share a little bit. I'll share what they've given to me, and then I'll ask that you be thinking while I'm talking about anything that you've experienced in your own caregiving experience that you may want to share, because we learn from one another too. So an overview and the importance of dementia. Dementia, as most of you know, is a complex disease that affects individuals very differently. The goal of this presentation is to identify a few common areas that we can use to support our loved ones so that they can have the highest quality of living in their home or in a residential living environment. These are some considerations for how people live with dementia, how they perceive their surroundings. And I'll take a minute to digress and focus on that word perceive. There's a phrase that I love that's perception is reality. And maybe you've heard that in other areas of life. It can be used in a number of different dynamics, relationships, but I think it's really key here for dealing with dementia. And an example I'll give is this beloved rubber snake that my husband has. And he will put it in the garden and he'll move it over to the flower beds, or he'll put it in the herb garden. And I'm going about my business outside and I stumble upon the rubber snake and I wail and squeal and carry on as if it's a real snake. It's been around for 15 years and I know it's a rubber snake, but my automatic response is to see that rubber snake and to have a response that's very authentic to that. What I perceive to be real is real for me. And that's something that people with dementia face repeatedly throughout the day. And that's if we can key in and focus in on what they're perceiving to be reality is reality, and it can be very scary for them. That's one takeaway from today. I think that with all of the education on dementia we have out there, there's a push for people who live with dementia to remain in their homes. And there's a statistic that 70 to 80% of people living with dementia are able to live in their own home. I know in my situation, we had enough support that when we cared for my father-in-law, he was able to live in his own home for the majority of the time. My mother-in-law, I've been caring for her for 8 years. She had a lot of physical ailments. The dementia set in, as I said, it's early onset stage of it, but she is now living in a residential community. And I had some health problems. I was not able to care for her fully in the way that was of service to her. It was, I think she was at risk and I was at risk. So there are times that we have to look at that avenue as well. But there is a lot we can do to allow our loved ones to remain at home. So getting the environment right is one of the key factors in being able to keep someone safe. So here are a few of the tips about what you can do in the home environment. And one of the first things that you want to do is keep patterns to a minimum. Busyness and patterns on upholsteries and rugs can create a sense of imbalance and what's the word I'm looking for? Chaos, and when you get dizzy, that word,
Vertigo.
vertigo. Yeah, it kind of creates a vertigo and an imbalance for our loved ones. The other thing that's really simple but important is to make sure that you have areas of contrast to a minimum. So if you have a light area on the floor and then you have a dark rug or something placed on that floor, that creates a, so to speak, black hole for those with dementia. And what that can do is it can create a couple things where they feel the urge to either leap over the hole, which of course would be dangerous, or to go around the hole, or just to refuse to move forward, and it can create unnecessary stress and conflict. So keeping those things, furnishings, the contrast down to a minimal when it comes to floor surfaces. The depth perception also affects balance. And so, again, what one other area, I guess, point I wanted to make regarding that is that if you want to have if you're trying to create a home-like environment and you want to have some type of contrast on the floor surface, you can have that built in so that you don't, area rugs are a problem. They're a tripping hazard, but you can have, if you're if you're remodeling for the aging in place, you can have like a carpeted area that has a built-in flush area rug. So it's meant to look like it's maybe a hardwood floor, but then there's an area that has a decorative, not too busy, but just a subtle shift, something to give it the home-like atmosphere, but it's not a tripping hazard, and it doesn't create the imbalance that a busy area rug might do. For the layout of the home environment, if you have that opportunity to control that, if you're designing from the ground up, or if you're remodeling a specific area that the loved one's going to be occupying, you want to consider that you have a space that the loved one can go to de-stimulate. Another key takeaway is that because there's so many challenges when someone has dementia, their stress is at a high level, and so it's exhausting. And so to create a space for them that has a sanctuary where they can get away, that has a private area away from noise and chaos. That's one way we can help take care of them and when designing new space. Another area is to, there's a lot of emphasis on sunlight and natural light coming into the home. And so if you're able to remodel or construct, you want to use low window sills. That is important for those in a wheelchair. It just allows the natural light to come in and give unobstructed views to the outdoor, which is very healthy for our loved ones. Another very specific to construction is when you're designing new space, or if you're remodeling, is to reduce materials which maximize noise. So for instance, brick, concrete, plasterboard, all of those type of materials are not acoustically friendly. The noise level will be increased, which adds to stress and disorientation. Furniture placement, creating space for muscle memory, so that if you have an area where they can work on a puzzle or coloring or something along those lines, strategically arrange the furniture so that they have natural light for those tasks. You also want to take into consideration the error that most of their memories come from. So the furnishings should be conducive to good memories in a time of an error that they were active in. So anything that you can do to bring familiarity to their environment is helpful. Stairs for the environment, that can be a real problem. One way to help is with visual safety is to make sure that the treads are painted one color if they're wood, and then the risers, which is the upright board, is painted a contrasting color. That allows for a safer visual guideline for how to maneuver the stairs. As most of you know yourself, sunlight is a stimulant and it improves moods for the residents, reducing depression and other psychoactive symptoms. So anytime we can, again, focus on the sunlight when we're creating an environment, that's important. Clutter is a big one, removing clutter. It's a safety hazard and it can lead to overstimulation. And maybe if you've visited someone who's a hoarder and you've seen how disorienting that can be and how it can really create a lot of feelings of discomfort and confusion. And so we want to declutter as much as possible. Another item was flooring. Again, we're still kind of on construction and remodeling and or anything that you can do to control your existing environment. Flooring, you want to avoid glossy finishes on wood floors or shiny surfaces because they can create shadows. And shadows, again, are that perception thing. They perceive that either something is moving or they perceive that it's something they can't step on. It's not safe to step there. So avoid anything shiny. Talked a little bit already about the quiet environment, but there's an emphasis on trying to think through when you're going to go into public spaces like churches or restaurants. You want to think about or take into consideration how these places serve someone with dementia, in that our entrances well marked is, for instance, if you've been to Starbucks, and not to pick on Starbucks, but every time I go into Starbucks, I'm confused. Am I picking up or ordering? Which part of the line do I get in? And so if you can have, if you can frequent businesses that have an easy flow of stations that can be more conducive to someone who gets confused easily. Okay, so moving away from the construction and now into visual clues. These are things that you can easily do within the home to help with them being oriented to what their tasks are, where and when, and reduce confusion. And so one important is to have a large calendar or a large clock that shows the time and the day of the week. It's also can be very soothing and reassuring to have seasonal decorations out, whether you decorate for the holidays or just the seasons, fall pumpkins, spring flowers, anything that you can do to help them identify time and space. That's a visual clue that can be really helpful. Another great one that I like is a visual landmark for places in the home that are important. So for instance, because they can get turned around, to have a large plant, maybe at the bedroom door, it's kind of a landmark. Okay, that is what leads me to the bedroom. And then here's a painting by this door that leads me to the bathroom. And so these are, because everything becomes uniform as far as walls and doors, anything you can do to mark these areas with something that they can latch on to reduces stress in their own home. I'm going to get into something that you can do with your own home painting project. If you feel like you don't have enough contrast between the floor and the wall, because that gives depth perception, the contrast between the floor and the wall, you can pick out paint colors that have what they call an LRV, the light reflective value. And that's just a fancy term for how much light does the surface absorb and how much does it reflect. And if we have two surfaces that are the same in their reflective value, it does not provide contrast, and it can create imbalance and disorientation. And so, to help understand the numbers, because they talk about a number being a 30 LRV, it's just the percentage that it reflects light. So for instance, black has a 0 light reflective value because it absorbs all the light. White has a 100% light reflective value because it reflects all of the light. And so the rule of thumb is that you want to have a difference in numbers of 30. So you would want to have, say, a 50 on the floor and an 80 on the wall. And you can go to any paint store and talk to them about that and get some guidelines. But it's just another way that you can help create contrast to help with depth perception issues. In the kitchen, one way to help with disorganization and disorientation is having open shelving or glass shelves. You want them to be able to quickly identify what they're needing. So if you've ever worked in someone else's kitchen and you're trying to prepare something, you know how frustrating it can be to open this cabinet and open that cabinet, open this drawer, and you're constantly stressed trying to accomplish something. And so if you can give them visual advantages, then that's going to reduce anxiety. If that's not an option, marking the cabinets with labels. Signage is really important. You don't want to overdo it on signage because it can become clutter. But if you can have clear, large signage with contrasting letters on a background, so for instance, a white index card with black bold letters saying plates, another one cups, another one glasses, that kind of thing, that can help. You want to make sure that the signage is at eye level and consider wheelchair friendly eye level. So those are visual cues that we talked about. Now I'm going to move on to some safety points. And preventing falls is one of the key things we can do to keep someone safe in our home. And the area rugs and the cords, the light cords, extension cords, those are trip hazards for anyone. But we want to be especially sensitive to those and not have those be an issue. Some real tricky tricks are to hide electrical panels. If that becomes an area of curiosity for your loved one, you can paint over the electrical door to make it the same color as the wall so it will disappear. For loved ones who are advanced in dementia and they're wandering and going outside is a risk for them. You want to be able to hide exits, and you can do this by camouflaging the exterior door, by painting it to look like a bookcase. Perception is reality is, again, if you can paint it to look like a bookcase, it will look like a bookcase. It will not serve as a hazard for loved ones going out and wandering. Labeling hot and cold water, it's easy to forget. So just having labels on those faucet handles. Setting the max on your hot water heater, because that's one of the first things that they forget to do is to monitor how hot they're letting the water get. Glass partitions, I mentioned the benefit of having glass cabinets in the kitchen, but other glass partitions such as patio doors or storm doors to an outdoor area, you want to have something to identify the glass, something, a label, a sticker, something to prevent them from going through those glass partitions.
And there's decorative things.
Oh, yeah.
John's mother used some leaves.
Yeah,
They're clear, but
Yeah.
you can see them reflecting in the light and stuff.
yeah. And people have done that for years with little children, put stickers below because they will plow right through a patio door. Or they don't usually go through it, but it'll stop. Abrupt. So now I'm going to move on to kind of the holistic environment. We want to design to appeal to the senses. We want to create the space so that they can have a sense of enjoyment. And this can come about through a couple of things we can do that I've mentioned briefly about creating sound and quiet places to retreat to. Providing music, soothing music. That is just, that's something that appeals to me when I have my own anxieties come up and with life. If I can remember to turn on soothing music, it makes all the difference in the world. So having quiet space, having access to music, being cautious of not having the ambient noises being too overstimulating. If you can do something to schedule the lawnmower to, not be cutting the grass on the day that your loved one is going to be there, or, if it's a tough time for them, anything you can do to reduce overstimulating noise is very helpful. For acoustics in the home, we talked about not building with brick and plaster and masonry, but if you put draperies, anything with upholstered sofas, pillows, those kind of things, they can really absorb the noise and help to create a more relaxing environment. Smells, having an open floor plan where you have the bedroom, the bathroom, and the kitchen all open enough so that they can participate in the smells of what's going on in the kitchen. That again is a sensory that we all can experience and remember it being meaningful to us at times. And so if we can increase that for them and allow them to experience reassuring memories that come about from the smells in the kitchen permeating through the house, fresh flowers, anything to prompt good soothing memories. All right, and last but not least, I'm just going to hit on public spaces a little bit more. One of the things that they recommend is clear and consistent signage, strategic seating places, so that I basically kind of hit on this earlier, but decision points, where to go, if you're waiting for something, where to go, if you're standing in line, how to enter the building, where to go once you're in the building. It's just an overwhelming experience to go out into public. And so focusing on those environments that are friendly for someone who is disoriented easily is just can help make a world of difference in their day. Even having a place that has, you have storage for a walker, that has parking that's you can park and be able to help them in and out of the car. without having to drop them off at the curb, because often that's a problem, to drop them off at the curb and then you've got to go park the car and they're alone. So finding a public place that has parking that's accessible and places to keep the walker and the wheelchair and that kind of thing, good signage, quiet spaces, all of those make an outing in the public more soothing. That is the end of my agenda, but I do want to ask you if anything that we talked about brought up something that you might want to share with each other and with me that has been either a question that you've had or something that you've experienced that's worked well. Something that didn't work so well and you wished it went better.
Well, we were going to downsize into one of our rental houses, which was small and easy, but after a few classes and a few runs to UVA, we're remodeling our garage in the basement right now. Not moving down there because there's already someone who lives in an apartment in the other side. But I'm just keeping our big house, and I'm making available 3 different kinds of living spaces. I'm just figuring, okay, over the years, we sleep on the 3rd floor right now, which is going to be, I can see already going to be difficult. So we'll move all to the main level. But eventually, we will just open up the basement and have a full house garden down there, I think. But it's good to hear the sort of things like I can already see noise and sound, quiet, but we've already dealt with a bunch of that already.
Yeah.
But that's why I was thinking how, also I thought maybe it'd be a little more technical, like how to wire your windows and doors. So when they open, you know, they come to your phone and it buzzes. So I can put my office like on a separate floor, but still know what's going on. But I'm working on all that stuff.
Yeah.
I didn't really think about the complete non-cluttering and chaos, but I kind of like simple designs and things.
So you've got it sounds like you've got a good opportunity for growth.
We're just rocking and rolling till we can't rock and roll.
Yeah.
Because the thought about being quiet and sitting still drives me crazy. I don't want to sit still or be quiet. I want to drive. But we have spaces.
Yeah.
That's works out.
Thanks for sharing that.
The color contrast, the light, I think I just already did that in that basement, but that was interesting. Layers.
Yeah. And it's interesting, the more I learn, the more I see how these things impact me, just, you know, in my own mental state. And how it makes me very sympathetic towards someone who's in an advanced state. Even if you just look at this floor here, it's disorienting. The reflective, it's a beautiful floor. But I can see, you know, how it's just there's light bouncing off of it and it can be disorienting.
You've given me some things to think about. Like I said, I have just come from taking care of my 90-year-old brother. And he has dementia. I stayed with him a week to give the main caretaker a vacation. And his house is very dark carpets, a lot of paneling all over. It was an old house and they bought it and remodeled it, and of course they used paneling, dark, heavy carpets. And the walls are so cluttered with pictures and plates and things.
I discovered something from a friend who talked about this, and I'm gonna do this, because sometimes Don just likes to be alone and quiet, but he likes to take the iPad and look at, because we vacation as much as possible right now.
Good.
On that. And he likes to look at all the pictures, and she said, you know, my mother has one of those automatic picture frames.
Yeah.
And you can download all your, you can like, you know, holidays and your kids and stuff, and just stick in your flash drive. And it'll just play, you can have different flash drives and they can just play different pictures, so it's just moving.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I mean, at some point I'll see that will aggravate him. Because we're still in a stage in that some days he's functioning and he's him and we're building something or doing something or working on something. And then there are mornings in which the circle goes around about whether it's 10 to 10 or 10 to 12. And did we eat breakfast or lunch? And on those days, it's sort of like, and today we put on meditation music and we sing songs that we like, I'm just like trying to, you know, and to talk myself into it. I'm always like, we're just at a party and it's a different trip we're on right now. I mean, what's going on. We're just gonna flow with it all. So.
Well, I didn't realize this when I go home to West Virginia. We have lots of cousins. Our mother was the oldest of 11. So we have lots of cousins. And I let them know when I'm coming home. And they come to visit. And of course, he loves coming. As a matter of fact, he likes to be the center of attention as long as he has your undivided attention. I don't know if you all.
Yes, we have a friend that comes over to me to help and hold by with his computer, and it just drives my husband crazy. He's like, he takes too much time. It's just too, and I'm like, oh my God, it's like, unless it's him and he's the only story. I'm like, really?
As long as somebody is, as long as he's entertaining somebody, or when it's just the two of us, I'm listening to him or something. Like I say, he has my undivided attention. He's okay. But if the phone rings, it's one of my daughters calling long distance,
My
the other
husband
things.
hates the telephone now.
What?
My husband hates the telephone now.
Well, he's up and gone. Well, you see, there's a playground right below his front yard goes down, and there's a playground that's been there for 50 years. And then there's the Ohio River and things. And he has, you know, gone out the back door and up the alley and walked around the block, you know, like in a moment when his caretaker, her head was turned and things. And I am constantly then up, going around the house, checking on him. He's raking the neighbor's yard 2 doors down, you know, as the leaves are falling and things. But I was ready to go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. I was very tired, after a day. And when somebody would come, some of our cousins would come. Like I say, as long as he had the floor and everything, he was fine. But he's up and moving and out.
Does he wear a watch?
No,
Okay, my daughter suggested this, which would get him an Apple Watch now and get him used to watching it. And then just tag it to the phone and the computer. So I'll always know where he's located. Also put on all the doors. We did this to his mother years ago. All the doors and windows can be programmed, so your phone alerts when it opens and closes. I know it's all a lot of technology. But you also can put these perimeter things around your house so that it dings if someone enters the driveway or goes out of the driveway. I mean, at some point I'm like, who's gonna do all this technical
Right.
stuff?
Yeah.
But there's people.
well, we would like to keep him at home if at all possible. He doesn't have any children and he's a widower. And I'm his next of kin. We're the only two left of our family. But my niece and nephew, my nephew has, thank goodness, he had everything set up. Power of attorney and executor and so forth. And she writes, between the two of them, we've got several people taking good care of him.
They probably have Apple telephones, so
Yeah.
a watch, if he wear a watch.
He used to, but he wasn't when I was over there. I noticed that. But since I have been back home 2 weeks and they're telling me how things have gone downhill. Like in 2 weeks, how he has changed. He's now he has fallen a couple of times. And they got his wife's, he's a widower. They got his wife's rollator out for him to use, but he can't quite manage it. He can do the one hand with one hand and the other hand's just hanging out here, But the house is very dark. And like I say, it's very cluttered, like wall things. And I mean, I didn't really know all that played a part in it.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing what you've been through. It's a lot, and I want to leave you all with a quote from Mother Teresa. And it's short and sweet. When we worked a hard full day and we're only a drop in the ocean, but if our individual drops were not in the ocean would be dry. Just a little word of encouragement. Thanks for all you do.
Well, I'm rethinking the basement